Welcome to all of you. My name is Warren Kinghorn. It's really a delight to see everyone here assembled. I'm a co-director along with Far Curlin of the Theology, Medicine, and Culture Initiative, and want to just welcome all of you to our Practice and Presence Conference. This is the third time we've held this conference, but the first time in September. We've done it in hot weather before in May, but this is the first time in the early fall, and we're just really delighted that you're here. And I know this is a busy time of year with a lot of things going on, both at Duke and elsewhere. So the fact that you all have taken your weekend to be here with us really means a lot. And so we just want to welcome you to this space. Welcome for those of you that have not been here, and for those of you that have, to Duke. Welcome to Duke Divinity School. Welcome to this space, Goodson Chapel. Welcome to Durham. We're glad that you're here with us this weekend. This is an academic institution, as those of you that are students here know quite well, but this is not an academic conference. At least it's not only an academic conference. We will be talking this weekend a lot about how, as those who are in some way related to healthcare, we focus our attention on those who suffer. What does it mean to walk well, faithfully, with those who are suffering and in pain? But this is a conference that's about more than ideas. As you might have seen in some of the material for the conference, we said we want to tune our eyes and hearts to how God is present in the work of healthcare. We want to engage scripture, theology, Christian history, but also other ideas, other things that we'll talk about tonight and elsewhere, open to how our imaginations and our practices might be transformed. And we want to grow in friendship with one another in the context of shared meals and conversation and prayer and worship. And perhaps mostly we want to rest and reflect and respond to God's love for us and for our world. That's kind of a big agenda for 36 hours, but if even part of that is met, I'll be happy. And so just welcome here. We're really delighted that you're here tonight, and I'm really excited about our evening. I do want to, before I introduce a few people and then introduce our speakers for the night, I do want to say one of our participants has had a car issue and needs a ride to the Holiday Inn on Guest Road, which is a couple miles north of here. If anybody's driving that direction after the conference, then find Rachel Meyer, who is somewhere. Rachel's right here. And just let her know that you're willing to do that. And the person who I'm talking about, we will make sure that you get here no matter what. I do want to just say thanks to a few people that are really involved with our program tonight and in the background. We've already thanked Rachel before, but I want to say again thanks to Rachel for all of your work, just kind of getting everything about this conference up and going. Carl Weissner is also here, who's our Managing Director for Theology, Medicine, and Culture in the back. And Rachel and Carl, as well as any of us here at Duke, are available to you for questions and other things throughout the weekend. And I want to acknowledge their really key central role in making this conference happen. Also want to really thank Amanda Noel and Paige Capes, who are in the back here. And thanks you so much for leading us tonight. And you'll be back in the morning, and we're just so grateful for you all being here with us tonight. So thank you. Also, Brittany Zeller-Holland will be doing graphic recording on the side, and really excited. This is a part of our plenary sessions this year, and we'll see this unfold over the course of the conference. And so thank you for being here with us, and really excited to engage with you. And Hannah Elmore is here doing some photography, and so we want to thank you all for all of your role here in the conference. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers, guests for tonight. I can promise you that I am the only person who will speak tonight using any form of notes, and so that's a good thing. You'll be glad for that. Our speakers tonight are Jeff Polish and Ray Barfield. And the topic tonight is I visited them learning presence on the pediatric oncology ward. And you're in for a really great conversation that I'm looking forward to sitting and hearing. I want to briefly introduce the two of them before they come up on stage. Jeff Polish is a consultant, professional speaker on the topic of storytelling and how to use true stories to create major impact in your life, your business, your organization. He's originally from New York, but now lives here in Chapel Hill. He travels across the country advising and speaking, but when he's not doing that, and those of you who are local in the Triangle area may know this, he produces and hosts the Monty storytelling events in North Carolina, and he's won all sorts of awards for this, and they're really amazing events. So it's a plug for your organization if any of you are local and can attend some of the Monty events that are going on. And Jeff is also a trail runner and a mountain biker and a dad and a husband and does lots of other things. And we're so pleased that you're here with us tonight. So thank you. And Ray Barfield is professor of pediatrics and Christian philosophy at Duke University Medical Center and Divinity School. He has like the coolest academic title in all of Duke University. So that's a pretty good thing. Married to Karen Barfield, an Episcopal priest. And Ray is hard to describe in any kind of introduction. Because he kind of blows all the categories that people have with him. So he's a pediatric oncologist. He has done anything from basic science research to oncology practice to starting the pediatric palliative care program here at Duke University Medical Center. He's a philosopher and he teaches philosophy here at the Divinity School and across Duke University. He's also a poet and a novelist and lots of other things that I have a hard time keeping track of. And he does it all without notes and always without a tie, which I really appreciate as well. So thank you so much. We're really glad to have you all here tonight. Thanks for joining us.
I wish I could watch her while she does that, but I'm going to behave. We're going to talk about stories. And I'll add to the introduction of Jeff that he is the finest storyteller I have ever heard and has more insight into what makes a great story, which means that he has an amazing insight into the things that fill our best stories and that grab our attention, which means things that are important to us, and things that matter to us as human beings, and things that hold up a mirror to us and show us things about ourselves that may be uncomfortable. They may be welcome. It may be a mix. And so being a master storyteller means having a profound curiosity and engagement with everything that shows up in human experience. Nothing is off limits. And that means some pretty uncomfortable things show up. I'm thinking of your weekend in the shape of a story. And you never begin a story with, and they lived happily ever after. It's just not how you begin a story. You begin a story with a problem, with a conflict, with trouble. Something's wrong. So something's amiss. You don't come together to listen to a story that is only going to recite happy things when you have the word suffering in the title of your conference. You know that you're coming to talk about some very real things. Now, Jeff and I have had more conversations than I can count. I am very grateful for his friendship. We go all sorts of different places, and we come from very different kinds of backgrounds, which makes our conversations quite interesting sometimes. Now, this is specifically a Christian, divinity school, and this is a Christian conference. And I want to just say a couple of things about that, because we're going to talk about stories, and we'll see what emerges. Okay? But I wanted to start by causing some trouble, if that's okay, Far. Okay. Yeah, you'll notice he didn't say it's okay. Because in our society, at least, we have, over decades, built up the reputation of this thing that we call medicine as the place you go when things happen to your body, when you become sick. The place you go when you're having a baby, so a new life is coming into the world. The place you go when you're injured. It's the place you go when you have overwhelming depression or anxiety or schizophrenia or something else that's disrupting your mental health. We've set it up as the place that we go when we experience profound losses. And the reason that I have a problem with people approaching medicine as a mechanic is not that the mechanical parts of the service aren't things we should do well. And it's not that they aren't themselves valuable. It's just that our experience of our bodies and of their brokenness is very, very different than the description of what's happening to the bones and to the flesh and the sinews, to the molecules. My experience is very, very different. If I'm going to walk into a hospital where all of these experiences have been brought together under the auspices of some kind of authority that we have, some kind of authority to speak into these situations, and if we have put up signs that say that because I have MD on my badge, I have a special place in the room when these kinds of problems arise and you bring your loved one in to see me, and you have an expectation that I'm going to respond well. If I'm set up to respond to these kinds of complex experiences of illness, which are very different from the physical description of illness, but I am utterly unequipped. I have a front row seat. I have an invitation. I have assumed the mantle of authority. And I've walked in the room with no competence to respond to the truth of the room. And so I think the way that that would tie into our theme of storytelling, and the reason, honestly, Jeff, that storytelling, the more we talk and the more we think about these things and teach classes together, the more storytelling has become my placeholder for what is central to the practice of medicine, with everything else in service to what emerges in the course of storytelling. The reason is because almost everything that I talk about in terms of my experience of loss, my experience of fear, my experience of hope, if we were making a decision and I'm trying to tell you how things are ordered in my life, what matters to me most. I may not be choosing between a good thing and a good thing. I may be choosing between a difficult thing and a difficult thing, and you must understand something about my story in order, as the authority, to help me walk that path. So to have spent no time developing a competence in storytelling seems to me negligence. And it seems to me, as our ICUs fill up with people who have not been offered a chance to think beyond the mere mechanical response to what's happening in the body, I believe that it's malpractice to be unable to negotiate a story or to recognize when the elements of a story are the most important thing happening in the room right now. That they're the most important determinant of how a decision is going to evolve. And that's frequently the case, and especially in high-stakes situations like intensive care units, where end-of-life sorts of things come up frequently. So I think that it is understandable why people neglect this, because I believe the system as a whole, including the entire education system and the way that we remunerate and the things that we hold in high value, the entire system has neglected this aspect of suffering. And so if we come through as medical students and nursing students and PA students, maybe it's not surprising that we have not been offered the tools, that we have not grown, that we've not matured in this area. Maybe it's not something that we would simply point to an individual and say, oh, you ought to be better at that. Maybe this is a systemic thing. But in any case, I think it's still unfortunate. And the one place where I would say that an individual holds responsibility is if they have decided that they simply don't care about that aspect of experience. To me, that is either a sign of a kind of spiritual or psychological maybe immaturity, or maybe a certain kind of smallness of worldview. It may also be a sign of moral injury. It may be that someone has come to a place because of the nature of their training. And this training that I'm talking about, this is 80 hours a week for 10 or 15 years. That's a lot of training. That's a lot of your conscious experience for a decade, right? So it may very well be moral injury. This is another thing that I hope y'all are able to talk about as you wrestle with why this is such a problem these days. But that's why I think there's a big difference between simply walking in the room and treating things the way that my mechanic does, and walking in the room and actually being able to see the truth of the room, especially as high stakes decisions come your way and you're asked to be a guide.
You know, and you heard me tell this story actually in class. So we teach a class together called Storytelling in Medicine and Health. And I recently, when we started the course, we were trying to just intro why stories are so important. And I told this story about my father-in-law, where 5 years ago he had a colonoscopy. Routine. He had a polyp removed, and that polyp was cauterized, and he was fine, sent on his way. And about a week later, he's out with some friends, just having a good time. Earlier that day, though, he had taken a couple of aspirin, and he's out with some friends that night, and he's sitting there, and he has this sudden urge to use the restroom. He goes to the bathroom, and he sees blood in the stool. And at first, he's kind of like, oh, maybe it's just, maybe I ate something, I don't know, whatever. So he goes back to his group, hanging out, and then he has this sudden urge to go to the restroom again, goes to the bathroom, it's the same thing. And when he's on his way back to see his friends, he actually passes out. His friends find him, 911 is called, he's taken to the hospital. And, that 1 week after, the colonoscopy where, that polyp is removed is a particularly delicate time, because whatever scab may have formed around that injury, if you say, may have come off, and the blood thinner didn't help, and, well, this is what happened. So he was bleeding out in some way. So he's in the hospital, and he's getting great medical care. His wife is informed, she comes, she brings his personal effects, she's giving him the care that he needs as well. And I find out that he's in the hospital the next morning, because my mother-in-law called all of her daughters, and then finally my wife told me the next morning, and I immediately said, I'm going. We live in Greensboro, which is about 50 minutes from where I live. So I'm like, I'm going. I'm the only one in the family, in the next generation, that has a flexible job that allows me to basically pick up and go to Greensboro. My parents actually don't believe I have a job. So, so anyway, I drive to Greensboro. And while I'm on the way, I think, what is it going to be like to walk in the hospital room where I see my father-in-law, who is a huge role model for me. I mean, this man taught me how to be a man, a husband, a father. He was a huge influence on me, and very important. And I didn't know what it would feel like to see him in bed. So I parked at Moses Cone Hospital, walk into the hospital. been provided to him before I even arrived.